We know Hogwarts Legacy takes place in the late 1800s, so using that information, we can actually find out some famous witches and wizards that might be in the game. That's right, thanks to all the old video games and those famous witch and wizard cards, plus the actual physical witch and wizard cards that were released, we can actually use the information and the dates on those to work backwards and see who just might be in Hogwarts Legacy. Of course, we're working with that broad late 1800s time frame, so for the purposes of this video, I'm going to assume that is anywhere past 1850. So let's start right off the jump with the two most obvious ones, Gellert Grindelwald and Albus Dumbledore. Dumbledore was born in 1881. Grindelwald was born just 2 years later in 1883. Of course, we know Grindelwald did not attend Hogwarts, so we won't be seeing him there. However, he was expelled from Durmstrang and would later visit Godric's Hollow, and that's where he struck up the friendship with Albus Dumbledore. Dumbledore, of course, did attend Hogwarts and was known as one of the brightest wizards even in his younger days. And it's only just recently that I have went back and looked at this screenshot right here, and if you zoom in on this character over here in the bottom left, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but to me, that looks like it could very well be a young Albus Dumbledore. Remember, when he was young, he had auburn hair. Of course, this area is a little bit dark over here, but that really looks like it is auburn hair, and of course, he has the glasses as well. So by being born in 1881, that means he would start Hogwarts around 1892. So it all depends on just how late we are starting in the late 1800s, as to whether or not we will actually see Albus Dumbledore in the game. Look, if Hogwarts Legacy takes place at all around 1892 or a couple years after, Dumbledore will absolutely be in the game. That's something that is so glaring, there's no way they would leave that out. So as with most things, we'll just have to wait and see. Okay, now that we've gotten the big two out of the way, I want to go to another one who I think would be absolutely insane and quite terrifying if they feature him in Hogwarts Legacy. It is none other than Sir Herbert Varney, who lived from 1858 to 1889. And he was actually a famous Victorian vampire who preyed exclusively upon women, specifically in the 1880s in London. He was actually captured and killed by a special squad from the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. So even if this isn't something that we actually see happen, or who knows, maybe we even take part in it, regardless, I think it's definitely something that we could be hearing about while we're attending Hogwarts. I could very well see that being a conversation among the kids as maybe they're reading the Daily Prophet one day and come across the fact that he has been captured and killed. Now, let's take a look at these other witch and wizards who are found on the famous witch and wizard cards. Beatrix Bloxham was born in 1794 and died in 1910, and she is the author of the Toadstool Tales series of children's books. She did have her own wizard card and was actually featured a couple of times in Tales of Beetle the Bard. But what's crazy about her story is that the books were banned because they have been known to cause nausea and vomiting. And see, it's little things like this that could sprinkle their way into Hogwarts Legacy that would really make the world feel alive and feel authentic to the wizarding world. Up next, we have Alberik Grunion, who was born in 1803 and lived to 1882. Grunion invented the dung bomb, so it's safe to say that we will most likely have access to dung bombs in Hogwarts Legacy. If you remember, Grunion is actually one of the very first wizard cards that Harry Potter received in Sorcerer's Stone. After that, we have Crispin Crunk, who was born in 1795 and lived to 1872. Now, Crunk was warned by the Ministry of Magic repeatedly to not keep sphinxes in his backyard. He never listened and eventually went to Azkaban for it. Now, we know there's that shot of Azkaban in the trailer with the Dementors. Could we possibly stumble across Crispin Crunk if we go there? Again, it all comes back to the date though, because he died in 1872, so anywhere after that and we wouldn't be seeing him there. Dorcas Wellbeloved was born in 1812 and lived to 1904, and she was the founder of the Society for Distressed Witches. Now, what's interesting about her time frame right here is, regardless, this firmly puts her as definitely being alive in Hogwarts Legacy. So the question is, will this Society for Distressed Witches come to play in the game at some point? This next one, though, is arguably even more interesting. It is Grogan Stump, who lived from 1770 to 1884. Now, if Stump rings a bell to you, it's because he was a very popular minister for magic who served from 1811 to 1819, so he's not going to be Minister of Magic in the game. However, he had a lot to do with the Department of Magical Games and Sports. There's a little bit of a discrepancy as whether he's the one who established it or if he just re-established it. But in addition to that, he also passed very important legislation legislation regarding creatures and beings in the wizarding world. Now, for any of you who have been following this channel for a while, you guys know that I think magical creatures, other magical beings, and their rights, or how those magical creatures are treated, is going to play a huge role in the game. So it's interesting that while he was minister, he passed very important legislation regarding this, which means in Hogwarts Legacy, we're going to be seeing the after effects of that. So what happened after he passed this important legislation? Moving on, next we have Hesper Starkey from 1881 to 1973. She was a witch who studied the use of phases of the moon in potion making. Now, right when I hear 1881, I immediately think back to Albus Dumbledore. So she would be roughly the same age as Dumbledore. So if Dumbledore is in the game, if we are in school around that 1892 time frame, then we very well could come across Hesper Starkey as well as Dumbledore. And speaking of magical creatures, there's also been a lot of talk of whether or not werewolves will be in the game. This would be another interesting way to pull in that character here if there actually is a werewolf in the game. Maybe it's a fellow student that we're working with and we come across Starkey who's going to help us make a potion who could perhaps help our friend. I don't know. This one doesn't specifically mention werewolves. It just mentioned phases of the moon, but still that could be an interesting connection. Up next, we have Justice Pillywickle, who was born in 1862 and lived to 1953. We don't know a whole lot about Pillywickle other than he was a former head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. The next character here is Laverne Dey Montmorency. Hope I'm pronouncing that correct. She was born in 1823 and lived to 1893. Now, she was confirmed to attend Hogwarts around 1834 until 1841. So this is not a character that we would be coming across in-game again if they stick to that late 1800s time frame. However, she is an adult character that we could possibly meet in some of our adventures. Now, her big claim to fame, love potions. So it's safe to say that love potions will have been created by that late 1800s time frame. It just remains to be seen if they'll feature in the game at all. Leopoldina Smethwick was born in 1829 and lived to 1910. She became the first witch to referee a Quidditch match. Another bizarre one is Mirabella Plunkett. She was born in 1839. We don't know when she died or even if she died. Why, you may ask? Well, she actually fell in love with a merman while on holiday. Turns out her family forbade her to marry him, so she transfigured herself into a haddock and was never seen again. Norval Twonk was born in 1888, lived to 1957. He actually died while heroically saving a muggle child from a manticore, and a famous wizard card was created in his honor. This next one here is another, I think, personally, a big one for Hogwarts Legacy. Oswald Beamish, who lived from 1850 to 1935. Beamish was a wizard who advocated strongly for goblin rights. Now, the fact that he was born right in 1850, he's guaranteed to be in Hogwarts Legacy. And depending on when the game takes place, maybe he'll be a student, maybe he'll be some sort of government leader, or maybe he'll just be someone we come across who we see is advocating for goblin rights. We know that goblins were pictured in the original leaked trailer, which, who knows, maybe that stuff makes it into the game, maybe it doesn't. Regardless, I think it's safe to say goblins will be in the game at some point, and it's very, very possible that Beamish's name comes up or we even meet the character himself. Roderick Plumpton was born in 1889 and lived to 1987. He was seeker for the England national Quidditch team and the Tutshill Tornadoes. He holds the British record for the fastest capture ever of the Golden Snitch, which was 3.5 seconds. But that didn't happen until 1921, so safe to say we won't be seeing that in Hogwarts Legacy. And then we have Sacharisa Tugwood, born in 1874 and lived to 1966. Tugwood invented beautifying potions and actually discovered the pimple-curing properties of Bubbatuber pus. I don't even want to know about the experiments that led to that. But who knows, if she's at Hogwarts while our character is attending Hogwarts, it's very possible that we could see some of this. Now, everything we mentioned there is pure speculation for Hogwarts Legacy. However, it is based on canon rooted in the original series. But if you want to see some of the spells that we actually see in the official trailer, then check out the video on the right side of your screen now where I break down the trailer and show you 10 spells that we actually see in that trailer. As always, thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.